Thanks, Joe. I'm joined now by Michael Fallon. He's the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. Chris Leslie, he's the Shadow Treasury Minister for Labour. Welcome to you both. Mr. Fallon, the Eurozone is clearly going to form a much tighter bloc now. It's going to move towards its more own tax and spend and budget policies. Huge change to the European Union. Time to live up to your promise of your party and repatriate some powers.
Well, we've always wanted to repatriate powers, things that can be better done at the national level
than at
the European level. But our priority at the moment is to make sure the Eurozone sorts out its problems. We've got a huge domestic British interest in making sure the Eurozone does not go on in this crisis. They do solve their problems. So that's the first thing we want to see come out of this week and the meetings that are taking place this weekend.
But we're just cheerleaders at the side on that. We're not part of that because we're not in the Eurozone, rightly or wrongly.
That's not true.
So we can support what they're doing. But we're going to support what they're doing in the knowledge that it is a systemic change in the nature of the European Union. So isn't that time for you to live up to your promise?
Well, we've had promises of systemic change before. We'll see whether that transpires. We've had various agreements of other countries to operate in different ways, like the Schengen Agreement on home affairs and so on. But let's be clear about this. If the Eurozone countries want to form a smaller grouping, they must use the European institutions to do that. You've just heard George Eustice agree with that. They should be using European law, the European institutions and the European Court. Yes, we want them to.
But you want the Eurozone to be a tighter, closer group, don't you?
We want the Eurozone as a currency. We want it to work. It's in our interest that it does not collapse, that it polices itself,
well, we know
and that it has credibility.
But Mr. Sarkozy and Mrs. Merkel say the way to do that is what they've agreed in Paris, and they want the rest of the Eurozone to take that on. The British government, it seems, supports that approach. So if we're supporting a tighter, deeper, more coherent Eurozone, what is the response, the consequence for Britain?
Well, what they've said is they now say they will and want to abide by the rules. They want to set themselves tough rules over budget.
What do you say? I know, Mr. Fallon, I know what they say.
Right.
I read the newspapers and the communique. You've just said you want them to do it.
Yes.
What then is the consequence for Britain?
The consequence for Britain, if they get on and do it, is that our national interest is protected too. Our economy is protected. The Eurozone problems won't then come over the channel. We want this currency to succeed. We don't want it to fall apart. That would damage our economy.
Let's see if I can do better with Labour. If they proceed to have a tighter, deeper Eurozone, what would the Labour policy response be?
Well, I think it depends, when we see the details of this treaty, whether it's going to be pro-growth, whether it's going to help actually solve the economic problems, or are we just going to be kicking into the long grass a whole set of constitutional changes that might not ever come to pass for 5, 6, 7, 8 years? I mean, we need to see the detail of this. We need to have a negotiation that is focused on growing in the economies and not just simply on austerity.
You're dodging the question too.
No, I'm not.
You don't need to see the detail to understand that if the Eurozone becomes essentially a fiscal union with constant combined common tax and spend and budget policies enforced from the centre, which is what the Germans want, I ask again, what are the consequences for Britain in its relationship to this new Eurozone?
They could be very, very significant, possibly detrimental. We have to, literally, we do have to see where this is going. I suspect that, just as the markets go up and down week by week, the changes that we see in the politics are also far from certain. We could see, I mean, we've heard about the Standard & Poor downgrading this week. It makes it look as though we're all very much focused on the European Central Bank's role as lender of last resort, rather than the possibility of a big bailout fund, which is what we really ought to have been pushing the Eurozone countries to do. But my problem, Andrew, it's really important, and I'm really exasperated by the fact that we have a government that isn't focused on this. They're not persuaded persuading
Well, I
the
think they're
Germans.
focused all
No, no,
right.
well, you don't know what I'm going to say yet. The Germans and the French and our own government are not focused enough on growth. If we have a coalition, it should be to earn some revenues to deal with the debt crisis. Why we're not doing that, I think that's a real failure.
Well, they say they're going to meet every month now to focus on growth policies,
Well,
so that's not quite true. They say that's part of the deal.
They promised that
but
before.
I want to come back to you because you're the governing party, and your party told us that if the Europeans wanted to make major changes, and I can't imagine a bigger change than what's been proposed for the Eurozone, that you would then use that opportunity to repatriate powers. And yet that's a word you won't even use this morning.
Well, they're not proposing to take any power away from us. What they're proposing to do is to work much closer together, to have the fiscal union, as you've said, to pool taxes and spending, and to have some common enforcement.
So that's not an opportunity, in your view, which, unlike a lot of your colleagues, for us then to renegotiate our relationship. You say no.
It's an opportunity. Hang on. I say it's an opportunity to protect British interests, to make
That's
it
not
clear
what
to
I
them,
asked.
to make it clear to the 17. They can't legislate for the 27. They shouldn't. That would affect us.
You see what I have to put up with, right?
It's tough, I can see that.
Yeah.
But,
What would you like to say?
well, it's tough. I mean, we have to remain relevant. I think if we want to remain relevant, we have to sit in the centre of this. We can't
You
be
can't sit in the centre if you're not in the Eurozone.
Well, this is a good time to start making lots of friends, otherwise we are going to be left outside. This is no time to be telling them what to do.
But the thing people say, oh, we can't be in the sidelines. As a country, both these parties have decided that we should be on the sidelines because they're both against joining the euro.
No, well,
Thank goodness. You know, they wanted in principle to join.
We
They
kept
stopped us going
you
in.
going into the.
Well,
The
in
thing
principle,
is
they still
here,
want to join.
we've got a serious risk. We're dangerously exposed. This idea that we're a safe haven is completely wrong.
Well,
Okay.
there are 20 things for you to think about. The Taxpayers Alliance have written out for you for repatriating.
There you go.
20 items.
Don't say we're not here to help.